All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our next virtual lesson. So I'm really delighted it's such a sunny day today because our lesson today is about horse show preparation. And today we're really going to be talking about how we prepare our horse, how we get them all clean, ready to go into the show ring. So there's lots of other things to do if we're preparing for a horse show. So we've had lessons on tack on our bridles and our saddles. So you would want to clean all your tack, make sure that was super sparkly, ready for show day. You want to get yourself ready, make sure you've got all your show clothing ready. And then of course, we want to get our horse ready. So for those of you who ride in the horse shows a little bit, you're very lucky because a lot of what we're going to show you today, the staff come in the day before or the morning of the horse show. We get here at like 5 a.m. to get all your horses braided and looking top sparkly, ready to go for the show. So we're going to show you today the main stages of giving a horse a bath and also the main stages of braiding a horse's mane. And if we have time, we will do the tail as well. So Miss Lolly's going to be helping us out today. It's a really great day for bathing because it's nice and warm. We don't want to give our horse a bath on a cold day, because obviously when their skin gets cold, they're going to really feel that cold. Beautiful day like today, they're going to dry nice and quick, probably going to feel quite nice for them. Okay, so let's see what Miss Lolly thinks about having her bath. So we are here in the wash rack. So we have a hose that's really nice and long. We have our cross ties and we have all of our supplies to hand. So you want to make sure you're kind of ready to go. Some of the things we're going to need, nice big sponge. If you're bathing your horse and you have your own horse, you probably want a few different sponges for different parts of their body. But we're going to do her like the main part of her body today. So we're just going to use one big sponge. We also want our shampoo. There's lots of different brands of horse shampoo. You want to figure out what works best for your horse. I actually really like this mane and tail brand. I think it washes them really well. But some horses might need a medicated shampoo or something like that. So we have down the side of our wash rack, we have lots of different types of shampoos for different horses. This mane and tail shampoo actually also works really well on human hair. So you buy a really big bottle, you can use it on yourself as well. It makes it really glossy and nice. Okay. We also have one of these things. This is called a sweat scraper, and this is going to be used at the end. It's kind of like a window squeegee. So we're going to use it to get the excess water off Lolly when we're done bathing her. Okay, so first of all, we need to get her a little bit wet. So I'm going to use my hose. Now, Lolly and I have worked together before. If you have never given a horse a bath before, you want to go really slowly with the water because some of them are not going to like it. So this might be a training process that you need to go through to get your horse used to the water. But I also don't want to like stick it in her face and spray it right at her, right? Nobody's going to like that. So I'm going to hold it down on the ground. I'm going to make sure it's not super hot or super cold. And then I'm going to slowly just make sure she's kind of figured out what I'm doing, checking in that she's feeling okay. I'm just going to start getting her body a little bit wet. Good girl. Good girl. All right. Doesn't have to be soaking wet because we're going to put her shampoo on with a nice wet sponge. Go on the other side. Good girl. Good girl. Hi, is you feel okay? Okay. I'm purposely trying to not get her mane wet because we're going to, ordinarily if I was getting ready for a show, I would wash her whole body and her mane and her tail all together. But because I want to, and then wait for it to dry and then braid it, But because I want to braid it right after to show you guys, I'm trying not to get it wet, okay? So normally I would wash her mane as well. Okay, so now she's wet. Now I can start getting my shampoo. So I'm going to get my, this is nothing special, just bathing our horse, right? Just the same as we bathe ourselves. So I'm going to get my sponge nice and wet. I'm going to pump a load of shampoo onto it. Good girl. It's important that you're always checking in with your horse, making sure they're feeling okay. And then we're just going to get in there. We want to try, might need to rub a little bit harder. Good girl. Oh, what a good girl. You can get special shampoos for different colored horses. So you can get special shampoo for gray horses like Lolly. Well, I have a black horse, special black horse shampoo that makes that color of their coat super shiny. But this is a really good all-purpose shampoo. Trying to get all these dirty marks off. Oh, and she's such a good girl. She's standing so nice and quiet. I think she might quite like this. I want to kind of rub in, make sure I get it kind of into her coat. She has a really big dirty bit at the back here. You want to come see, Sharon? So she had a really big poop stain back here. So we're going to give this a good rub. Try and get that off because it actually stains their coat. Now, any of you who are in classes, you should be thinking right now, what am I doing wrong? I'm standing right behind my horse, right? So again, I work with Lolly a lot, and I'm making sure all the time by talking and touching her that she knows where I am. I'm also watching her body language, like her ears, to make sure she's not upset, because we obviously want to be very careful when we're hanging out behind our horses. Good girl. But she can feel where I am with the sponge. So if I was doing a full bath, I'd also be cleaning her legs, getting right down there on her legs. But we're not going to do that today because we want to have time to show you guys some braiding. Good girl. All right. Do the same on the other side. Nice big circles. So it's really helpful if you have done a lot of training with your horse, so your horse trusts you a lot, so that when you need to do all these things like bathing them, or they might need to have their legs washed with a medicine or something like that, you want your horse to really trust you and be happy to stand with you. This can be a very easy process with Lolly because she stands here nice and quietly. If your horse is very agitated, is very worried, is that nice? Very anxious, then this is going to be a really hard process. And it's not their fault. That's our job as horse people to help our horses understand that we're doing something nice for them, that we're helping them, and that they can trust us in lots of different environments. So that's where our groundwork comes in that we've talked about in our virtual lessons. Okay. So we've got most of the big dirty spots. So now, the important step, we want to make sure that we get all of this shampoo off her so it doesn't stay in her coat and she doesn't get itchy. And again, some of your horses might need a certain type of shampoo. They have certain sensitive skin, just like us. Some of them prefer, some of their skin does better with one brand than the other. Okay. Try and start high up. Good girl. What a good girl. Good girl on top. So I'm running my hand down to try and push all that shampoo out of her coat. They all rinse out. So this is something we do to prepare for a show, but it's also good for the health of our horses, right? To have a bath a couple of times a year. Helps keep any kind of little bits of fungus, anything like that that might be growing in their coat. We want to get rid of all of that. Can help with their skin. But we also don't want to over-bathe our horses. If we bathe our horses too much, then we wash out all the natural oils in their coat. And then when it rains, they're going to get really cold. So we also don't want to over-bathe our horses. What a good pony you are. What a good girl. So I have a friend who has a horse who is terrified of hoses. So if your horse is scared of a hose, you might have to do this with a bucket and then work on them being not afraid of a hose. Because it's obviously a lot harder if you can't use your hose. Wally is such a good girl. It is totally normal when you wash a horse for you to get at least as wet, if not more wet than the horse. This seems to happen to me every single time I wash a horse. I get a bath as well. So I'm actually doing all right today. I'm not too soaking wet yet. Good girl. All right. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go to the other side. Oh, we're standing on the horse. Can we make a step over? Good girl. Good girl. Again, I'm talking to her as I walk behind her to let her know where I'm going. Oh, you can see all the dirt coming out. Look at that one. Wow. It's going to be so clean. You're so fancy. So if you're a competitive rider and you're going out showing like every couple of weeks in the summer show season, you're going to be bathing your horse quite a lot, especially if you have a white horse, grey horse like Lolly. So sometimes you're not going to give them a full bath. Sometimes you might just kind of get spots that are dirty and or you get really ripped and you pay someone else to do it for you. We talked about horse careers and being a groom. So this is something that your groom would do for you if you were going to pay them to do it. Or something you would do if you were a groom. Good girl. Good girl, Lol. I know.
It seems like you have to spend more time rinsing than soaping.
Spend way more time rinsing because you just want to make sure you get all of that shampoo out of their coat. Yeah, the rinsing does take longer. Good girl. All right, we're going up here, so we're good about that. So I just want to make the pressure a little bit gentler when I get near her face. I don't want to spray her in her face. She's not going to like that very much. And I want to make this a nice experience for her so that she's always nice and relaxed about it. Good girl. Okay. So she looks pretty good, but she's super wet, right? So I don't really want I don't want it to take her a really long time to dry. I also, for two reasons. One, because I want her to get nice and dry so she's back to her normal temperature. And also because she goes out in her paddock and rolls while she's wet, then she's going to get really dirty again. So I want her to dry off kind of quicker. So that's what this is going to be for. So like I said, it's kind of like a window squeegee. Has a soft side on one side. And I just use it, were you asleep? Hi. I use it in the direction of her coat. You can see it pulling all the water out of her coat. You also might use this if you've worked your horse and your horse is really hot. You might just hose them down after. And then you want to use your sweat scraper. You can see how much it pulls out. Pulls a lot of water out. Good girl. Oh, Lolly, you're so good. You're so good. Good girl. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. Now I can already see some spots where there's still a little mark. So if I wanted to, I could get my shampoo and go over and do work on those little spots to get them super clean. Good girl. Good girl. Okay. So she is bathed and she is good to go. So we would want to wait until she dried, and then we might check to see if there are any other spots that we might just want to touch up a little bit. Like I can see that she has a little patch here where it's still a little bit dirty. So with her face, I might just want to get my sponge and kind of rub at that, do it really gently with the sponge rather than put the hose in her face. She might like that a little bit more. But we want to show you guys about braiding today. So I'm going to move on from bathing, talk about braiding. Okay, so I just got to get all my things together. So for braiding, we need a lot of stuff. Okay, it's a really good idea for braiding to get yourself like a braiding, I forgot mine today, but like a braiding pouch so you can have all your things easy to hand. So first thing I want to do, I want to make sure that her mane is all free from knots. So just like braiding your own hair, for those of you who've ever done that, you want to make sure that your hair isn't all knotty. Okay. So I'm going to take my comb. Now Lolly's mane is actually quite long. If I was going to be doing her braiding every week and going to a show, I would probably shorten her mane to more kind of like this height. But she gets to be okay. Oh. And if we do cut out again, guys, then what we'll do is we'll make a video of what we're doing and we'll post it on the Little Bit website under resources. So if we do cut out, then yeah, we'll post that up there on the website so you can go and see it there. Okay, so that did give me a little time to get a bit of a head start though. So what I've done is I wanted to divide her mane up into where we're going to braid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Oh, so I'm supposed to have, this is a silly horse person rule, you're supposed to have an odd number of braids. And I've made an even number. So if I was going to do this for a show, I'd probably adjust some of the last two, so I got an odd number. but I'm not going to worry about that for today. Okay, so I want to try and make my braids approximately the same size. So I kind of measured them with my comb to split the hair into equal sections, because if I don't split them into equal sections, when I roll them up, I'm going to get some really huge braids and some little teeny tiny ones. So I want them roughly even. Okay, so now, again, I should have brought my braiding belt. Okay, so there's lots of different ways that you can braid your horse, using a needle and thread, using rubber bands. So I'm going to show you my favorite way of doing it, which is kind of actually a combination of the two. So I'm going to start with my first one. And all I want to do is just a straightforward braid, just like we would do. So 3 pieces, always going into the middle. I want to keep it pretty tight. If you have a big horse, you also need a stool to do this. Otherwise, you can't reach. So, good girl. Good girl. I know. What are we doing? Again, it really helps if your horse is used to this. Your horse is throwing their head around and very agitated. It's going to be pretty hard to do. So, making nice long braids. This is a good reason why you might want to trim your horse's mane. Good girl. I know. Doing great. Okay. Getting right down to the bottom. Now I'm going to take one of my bands. I'm going to put my rubber band around the bottom. Now, if I was doing this for a show, I would be using white bands and white thread so that you couldn't see it, because that's the color of Lolly's mane. But because I'm doing it to show you guys, I'm using dark because I want you to see. Turn this up out of the way a little bit. Okay, so now I've got my nice long braid. I would do that all the way down her mane, so that all her mane is braided up. Okay, so now I'm going to take my needle and thread. I'm using a plastic needle so that I don't accidentally push it into Lolly. That's not going to be very comfortable. Again, I would usually use white thread. This is actually yarn, which works just as well. It has a knot in the end. So I'm going to push it through from the back, pull it up like this, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to push it through the underneath, I know, the base of the braid that's coming out the top here. And then I'm going to pull it, and it's going to make a big loop and pull the end right into the base of the braid. I'm now going to fold the braid so it makes a little button. Now I have to sew it in place. So I'm taking my needle, I'm going to go up all the way through the base of that button, out the top, and pull it out the top. I'm going to go to the around this side, same thing. Now the reason I like to sew them in place, because these might need to stay in your horse's mane like all day if you're at a show. And I find that sewing them in place helps them stay a lot better. I'll show you how you can do it with a rubber band. Okay, so I've gone around a few times. Now I'm just going to push through. Where did I put my scissors? There they are. Okay, Lolly, hang out. And then chop it off. Now we have our first braid in Lolly. So I want to do these all the way down her neck until her whole mane is braided. I'm going to show you one other method that doesn't use the thread. It just uses the rubber bands, which is a little bit easier, but it doesn't stay in place quite as well. So I'm going to do the same thing. Start making my braid. Again, I want to try and make it nice and tight. When you get into show season and you're doing this every 2 weeks, you're going to get really fast at this. And if you don't want to do it yourself,
Okay.
are we back?
Sorry, everybody. We lost our internet, or excuse me, we lost our cell phone coverage.
The world is fine today. Okay, so making our long braid. So this time, instead of sewing it, I'm just going to make a ball and fasten it with a rubber band. Now these are special horse braiding bands. So they come in big pots like this, and they're little teeny tiny bands. They come in all different colors. Okay, so I'm going to ball it up. So again, I want to put the base to the top, and I want to roll it up into a ball, and then I'm going to fasten it by putting the band around it like this. So you can see right now it looks similar, but it's not quite as tight because you can't like pull it in place. And also if she kind of shakes her head and rubs on this, this one's going to come out a lot easier. Lots of people have their own ways that they like to braid. This is my preferred way, but you practice, you figure out what works for you and your horse, and you go with the method that works for you. There's no right or wrong, but these are the type of braids that we're aiming for. Okay, we're going to do one last thing, which is her tail. So Sharon, if you want to come around, hopefully the phone will like it better because we're in the shade. So yeah, we have Washington phones that don't like it when you go in the sunshine for too long. So these, sorry, I should have said, these are button braids that we would use if you were doing like dressage or show jumping. Different disciplines of horse riding braid their manes differently. So in hunters, sometimes they do these little teeny tiny braids, and there'll be like hundreds of them, like, well, not hundreds, but a lot more than this down the horse's mane. So this is the type of braid that I would use if I was going into a dressage competition. Other types of braiding are available, and so you can Google that. So braiding a tail. So Lolly actually has quite a nice tail. I haven't washed it all the way through, and that would be something I would want to do first, but I am going to comb it. You can see it's a little bit dirty at the bottom, but it's not super knotty. So doing a tail, it's kind of like, have you ever done a French braid? So I'm going to start at the top. I'm taking a piece from the side on each side. I'm going to cross it over, take another piece from the side. The hardest part is getting started. Once you're going, you're good. Okay, so now I've got my 3 pieces. So now each time I come to the middle, I'm going to take a piece from that side and join it into it, like this. So I come over, I add a piece into it, and basically I'm like wrapping the dock of her tail. So those of you who were in the horse anatomy lesson, we learned that there's a dock which runs down the middle of the horse's tail, and I'm wrapping her dock in this French braid, essentially. I'm not doing a brilliant job of this, but we're getting there. So it's starting to develop a little bit here. I'm going to go all the way down. Again, trying to keep it nice and tight. You know, if you're going to braid your horse's tail and then go around a show jumping course where you're going really fast and jumping over big jumps, you got to remember that, and also your horse might be swishing its tail. It might be hot weather. There might be flies. You got to think that you got to make your braid strong enough to stay in place. And we're going to keep going. Okay, so if I was going to finish this off fully, I would keep doing this a little further down towards the bottom of her dock. And then when I get to the bottom of her dock, I'm gonna, she actually has a really long tail. It's actually really lovely. Finish it off. It takes ages. So if your horse has a really long tail, you could just put the band in it here, let it kind of lie in the tail. But it's better if we do it all the way super long with Lolly. I'm going to stop there. This is going to look a little messy because I didn't take it right to the end, but I want to give you guys the idea. Good girl. I know. You're being very patient. And then I would essentially I braided it all the way to the end, I would then wrap it up. It's not going to look super neat because I didn't braid it all the way to the end, so I'm just kind of bunching it up. But I would braid it up into a little hoop like this, so it will just sit in her tail like that. And that's how we braid her tail. So yeah, and again, depending on what discipline you're riding, there's different rules for if you should braid, if you shouldn't braid, how you should display your horse. It's also slightly a personal preference in some sports. So a good thing about braiding the tail is that it shows kind of the shape of the back of your horse. So if you're wanting to try and emphasize how fit and healthy and strong the lovely butt of your horse is, then you might want to braid their tail. So that might be something you want to do. When I was in pony club, when I was a little girl, that was a long time ago, I used to ride with somebody who would not let me get in her trailer to go to a horse show if my horse was not braided, because she said it was rude to the judges to turn up in the ring without your horse being braided. So again, a lot of these things we do are tradition, to do with, you know, we're going to a show, we're going to show off our horse to the best that they can look. We want them to look beautiful, and it's a special day getting to go out and work with our horses at a competition to show off all of the work we've been doing to build up that horse as an athlete and to build up ourselves as a rider athlete, and all the work that's gone into that. So it's kind of I think it's a nice thing to do, to braid our horses and get them looking as wonderful as possible for their special day as well as ours, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and open up for questions and see if this works. Good girl. Lolly's been super patient here. You're a good girl. She's having a little nap, I think. Good pony.
Okay, so people should be able to unmute themselves if they choose.
So you guys, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourselves, if you want to say hi or ask any questions. Good girl.
I see a chat comment from someone that said, I show jump and I normally do 11 to 13 braids on my gelding.
Right, nice. So an odd number, right? Like I said, I did them too fast and I came up with an even number of braids. But as that person's saying, they do show jumping, they're wanting 11 or 13 braids. Depends on your horse and how thick their mane is as well as to, sometimes you might want to do a couple more if your horse has a really thick mane, otherwise they turn up like big footballs on the top of your horse's mane, and we don't really want that either. But yes, I'm sure if you do show jumping that you're very good at braiding. You want to braid all the time when you're jumping. Good girl.
Does anybody else have any questions?